I'm Chuck Kovacic, and welcome to State of the Art. The state being California, and the club being the California Art Club, where we take an opportunity to interview some of the leading members of the California Art Club. And today, we are going to be speaking with our cover boy. There he is, Jim McVicker, as featured on Plein magazine. Jim, it's always nice when you see your name in print properly spelled, isn't it?
Oh, it's very nice. Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that you could join us today, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that gardens have always been associated with artists. Monet, of course, Giverny, Renoir has a small garden in Paris and Montmartre, which I was lucky to be able to paint in. John Singer Sargent, Tissot, any number of artists use their gardens for their models and their still lifes. And you do a little bit of all of that, don't you?
Yes, I do. I've always, well, we've been in our house for 30 years, and when we moved in, there was a garden already existing, which we expanded on with the intention of painting it. I knew the moment I saw this place, both my wife and I would be painting the garden. So, yeah.
And you're just a little bit south of Eureka, isn't it?
We are. Yep.
Okay.
What's
the name of the little town?
It's a Lolita. It's a
Lolita.
cow town, kind of known for its cheese made here and milk products and all that stuff. Yeah.
The Lolita cheese. Do any of the locals, are they aware of your activities and your talents?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I know a few locals, but I not only paint our garden, I paint all over the parts of Lolita, the downtown, the ranch lands and so forth. So yes, I'm kind of a fixture on the landscape here. In fact, I think we had a couple of friends that have come down here to paint when I haven't been with them, and somebody's pulled up and said, "Hey, that's McVicker territory you're painting."
Today we're going to get to focus on some of your garden paintings, and I see a lovely one behind you right now. What's the size of that?
That's 40 by 60. And that's the most recent garden piece I've done. I've got a smaller one I've painted after it, but I spent a good part of May into June working on that painting. And then it took a bit of adjustments and so forth in the studio to pull it together. Sometimes on a large canvas, it's and just the lighting situation, getting set up in a proper manner, it was very hard to take it all in. And I mean, I had to look around the edge of it and so forth to really see what I was painting. So it often wasn't until I had it in the studio to look at it that I knew, where I was going with it, so to speak.
One of the great things about your garden paintings and the still lifes that you do plein air is that they're totally plein air. You've made your garden your studio, and you just step out on your deck.
Yep.
There you are in your garden. You start painting away. And your garden paintings and your garden still lifes are done totally plein air?
They are. I mean, I'd say easily 90-95% of it is done plein air. And I think almost any plein air painting I do, it's rare for me to feel like after I get it back to the studio, it's totally working. So most all my plein air paintings take some adjustments and changes or modification a bit, but yeah, 90-95% of it, 99% on a lot of them are all done outdoors.
And so, of course, that would necessitate going out at the same time every day. What is the weather like that allows you to do this and support that?
The weather's iffy up here. It's gotten better. I think the climate change we've been experiencing has made this less fog. We had a few drought years. Last year we had a good amount of rain, but our summers, I remember I moved here in the 70s, I could not see the sun the whole summer, and that's very different now. I mean, what's it, 11 o'clock, and it's a beautiful morning, been sunny since early, since sunrise. So, but it can be frustrating. There's times where if I'm on a really large canvas and I don't get enough sittings on it outdoors, I put them aside and bring it out next year at the same same season. And
what's your favorite time of the year to paint, Jim?
Really all of them, but for the garden, early spring.
Okay, early spring.
Up into June. That's when our roses are really flowering. And we have roses in the garden as well as along the walkway by the garden, and a lot of perennials. And so there's just a lot of lush action happen at that time. A lot of green to deal with.
Yeah, so it's primarily floral. Do you have any fruit trees, vegetable patches?
Oh, we have a lot of fruit trees. Well, not a lot, but we've got 4 apple trees, a pear tree in the yard, which is just off to the side of the garden. So my outdoor still lifes have been painted there with set amongst the apple trees. I intend at some point do one incorporating the garden as well. I just haven't figured out quite how I want to approach that. But the apple trees, it just seemed like the right setting. And even though it was an odd combination, even bringing some of my rugs outdoors, I felt like it really worked. And anyway, yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful stage setting to see pieces of your work and the different flowers and the different props and things. They're almost like characters in a play. Can we take a look at some of these pieces now?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, that's a spring painting. I'm standing on the north side of the garden, and that's my wife, Terry, posed for me in this painting as a gardener, so to speak. But you can see the roses and foxgloves and Westonia, some poppies, daisies, and various other perennials. The annuals tend to start popping a little bit later in the year, like now. We did not plant as many annuals this year, but and then we have a stone walkway that goes right through the center of the garden, and so that's something I work on every year, pulling all the stones up, getting rid of weeds, trying to open it up, and then put the stones back.
Now they go on at some length that Monet, when he was building his gardens, would do specific plantings and different specific floral arrangements to get different color effects. Have you been doing something similar in your garden?
I've tried. Once in a while it works. Now, the roses work for us because we have big section of these sort of warmish white roses, and then a rose called a Buff Beauty that goes along the walkway. So those do a beautiful combination, but we've had a gopher issue over the years that I think I plant probably 100 gladiolas every year, and I'm lucky to see 12 of them come up.
I always enjoy these still lifes, the floral arrangements, and particularly the using of the different rugs and arrangements.
Yes.
You use other props, other antiques, or found objects in your paintings?
I have a few antiques. I've got some old pottery that's really quite beautiful from Mexico, and some of my favorite props are something I bought at the dollar store, so I don't need fancy vases or anything, and I basically like their shape, their color. And then this particular painting, of course, you can see the apple trees, but that's our roses. I clipped all those, put them in the vase. And so this was all done outdoors over several days. I try to really focus on the roses the first day. And of course, overnight and the next day, I mean, the winds, they're always shifting. So you have to really make a good mental note of it in your head. And then I'll add more roses when things poop out. As long as I got my design down, it can work.
Do you do a series of smaller plein air sketches to set the scene before you get involved with something larger like this?
I don't. I've never done preparatory work. I shouldn't say never. I've done that for a couple of things that were commissions, working up small ideas that would go into a larger painting. But for my work, I do plein air and my studio paintings, still lifes and portraits. I I jump into it. And
Yeah.
if it isn't working, it comes off the canvas and I jump into it again. So
Well, the greens in your paintings are so magnificent, and so many fellow artists are baffled by greens and how to get them correct and appropriate. What arrangement do you have for your palette? What colors do you prefer?
for my greens, I'm mixing. I have two yellows, a cad yellow and a cad yellow lemon. So I've got a warm yellow and a cool yellow. And then I use three blues: cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and ultramarine blue. Now, if I want to really warm those mixtures up, I'll add a little bit of orange or some cad red, some of my transparent red oxide, which is used in the darker area of that tree, mixed in with the blues and yellows to create a warmer tone. If I want it to be cooler, I'll use more of the blue. It's all for me based on observation and what's going on. And I occasionally put a green on my palette, once in a while a viridian. If I really need a vibrant green, which you sometimes see in our garden, I'll get a permanent green or a phthalo green, something like that. Just a little bit of that to make a green pop a little more, have a little more zing to it. But I love painting green. And up here in Humboldt County, if you don't like painting green, you're gonna it's tough because now the fields are turning golden, but winter through spring and then again in the late fall when it starts to rain, they green up again. So,
Well,
and this is a small piece.
Wonderful greens popping, and the addition of the colors of the different flowers. But then you get these great shadows happening in there. What do you use to get these wonderful shadows?
Those are like on the sidewalk there, and in the very foreground. That's probably mixing more with my ultramarine and some red or a little bit of alizarin or rose. Quinacridone rose is a color I use a lot in the garden because alizarin just sort of gets gray when you add white to it. Those reds in those flowers are probably pure cad red right out of the tube. And there are some gladiolas in here, so that was a good year with some glad. And I planted more than that, but that's what came up. And then that's a canis plant with the tall red pieces. And what you see in the foreground is an old window frame we took out, and we use that to plant vegetables in. And so it's got a little wire under it so the gophers don't get it. And sometimes we put flowers in it, but this year we had quite a few vegetables growing in it.
Well, you must have an extraordinary green thumb. I can't get much to grow in my garden down here. Of course, it's much hotter in the San Fernando Valley. But do you have a particular flower that you've been trying to grow? And were other members of your family interested in gardening that might have inspired you along the way?
My dad. I mean, my mother loved the flowers. She didn't really garden, but my father at the weekends. He was out in the yard all the time, unless he was watching some sports on late in the afternoon on TV. So he was a rose expert, really. I mean, he planted roses, and then he did annuals every year in our yard. And it didn't even dawn on me until I started painting flowers. It wasn't something I got into right away, but later in the mid to late 80s, started getting into painting flowers. And God, I realized that influence from my dad, not so much as painting, but the fact that he loved flowers, and I grew up with that. I hated gardening. That was my chores, pulling those weeds on those hot Southern California summer days and that rock hard earth around. But anyway, yeah, I definitely credit him and my mom with my love of gardening, and they traveled a lot with us, and we went to parks and national parks and state parks, and so the landscape and that type of stuff was important to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is another one of your wonderful still lifes. What's the size of this painting, Jim?
That's 40 by 30, and that piece is was painted last summer, and those are begonias. I grow begonias every year in pots, and I'm not great at it, and I'm probably not doing something right. I've got several growing now. They haven't started to flower yet. But I put all the begonias on that table and brought the rug out, and I hadn't painted from this angle, and this is later in the afternoon. Yeah, I'm very pleased with that painting.
Now, are you one of those gardeners that has shelves and shelves of botanical books and tips how to?
I think we years ago bought the Sunset Guide to Gardening. No, I'm kind of shoot from the hip gardener and painter for that matter.
I just love these rugs that you work in. What's the story with the rugs? Are they from a particular region or area of the world?
Yeah, I mean, this is what's called from the Caucasus region, what they would call a Caucasian rug. So a lot of them are what are called Oriental rugs, and I've bought a lot over the years. I started painting the rugs back in the early '80s, and really through influence of one of my heroes as a painter is Vermeer and what he did with his interiors, and so that's where I really use them in my. Some things with figures years ago, and then with my still lifes, I'll use them quite often. And I would go to stores and ask them, do you have any rugs that aren't out on display that maybe have a hole in them or something? And they'd bring stuff out. So I often got very good buys on some nice rugs that somebody isn't going to lay on their floor. So yeah, I love the patterns, love the color. I mean, they're really interesting to paint. Years ago I swore I'd never paint another one, and I did quit painting them for a while, and then I kind of started approaching them a little different, more with this idea, like in this painting, of a partial rug, and I like the idea of the folds and so forth, and then outside, it's you got this short time frame of that lighting. So I worked several sittings on that painting outdoors.
Uh-huh. Do you find yourself that when you started doing these garden paintings and the still lifes, did you look for inspiration in other artists' gardens and how they portrayed them?
Oh, very much so. I mean, Monet, very early on, before I ever painted a garden, he's, if I was to pick 5 landscape painters, he would certainly be in it as someone that influenced my work and also my aesthetics, I guess, and what he did with his gardens. We've got a Givernay book, and so we got hundreds of art books, and so that is, it may not buy gardening books, but we buy a lot of art books and have, I've spent hours and hours of reading them and looking at the images and so forth. So yeah, definitely an influence.
You tend ever to bring in models other than your wife?
Yeah, that's my wife, Terry, again. And this is every time I see it, it is one of my favorite garden paintings. And one of the things I like about it is the sparseness in the foreground, where you see a lot of the earth. And this is a later painting. I probably painted that in September, late August, September. And the sunflowers are happening. And we didn't plant sunflowers this year, but we have Terry and I both hired a neighbor for a number of years. She modeled in our garden and she modeled in our studios. But she grew up and got married and has kids and long gone. And so now
we're garden someplace.
Yeah, might be. So no, don't really. We used to hire models in our studios downtown Eureka. Models are great, but I prefer painting people I know and painting friends and painting Terry, and so I'm not as interested, I guess, now as I was at one time in actually hiring a model.
What's the size of this particular?
This is 40 by 54. So it's pretty good size too. And this is late afternoon. The shadow is being created by our house, which I'm standing on our front porch. And I like painting with the sun behind me often, and so that's what this is. It just that glow of the light and
the green. I love the accent mark of the telephone pole and
yeah,
trees and the figure. It's just really wonderful.
Well, thank you. That telephone pole is there, and I debated about putting it in, but I felt like it needed it for the design, and that's what's happened. So I love painting telephone.
I like it because it's the imposition of the outside world.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Have we got any shots of your studio to share?
I think we do.
Ah, there we are.
Yeah, that is. In fact, I'm looking that direction right now. You can see my easel there. So I set up under the skylight. I set up my still lifes on a table, either against the wall or in the middle of the room. When I'm painting, if I need to see that wall space. I was recently straightening out the studio, and and kind of putting more work up on the wall than I had because I was trying to get it off the floor. But when I'm working on a still life, I might hang a carpet on the wall. I may use just the wall. I'll try and create things where it might create a shadow and so forth. But I love the skylight. It's a beautiful light to work under.
It certainly must be a nice transition to be able to bring in one of your garden paintings to kind of finish it up a little bit with that nice natural light.
Yeah, because I've still got the natural light. Yep. It's I think one of the best ways, if you're painting outdoors, one of the best ways to look at your work is under a natural light. So, and I think almost anything painted under natural light, to me, looks good with a light on it too.
You've created this wonderful world that has become your studio, and I always look forward to your postings on Facebook and
thank you.
Media, and we're so delighted that we were able to share some time with you today. I just have one personal question. If I ever find myself up in Northern California, can I stop by for some painting in your garden?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've had painters over here painting once in a while, so you bet.
I look forward to that, Jim, and I know the folks that are watching State of the Art, highlighting the California Art Club members, are also going to be looking forward to seeing you and your garden. And Thank you again, Jim, and thank you, Gary Spizak, for doing all the technical machinations. And thank you for watching State of the Art. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you much.